Okay. Hi, this is Jesse Dryden. And Jesse, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, you just said my name, so yes, I confirm that I am Jesse Dryden.
Good.
I am Jesse Dryden.
Nice to meet you.
I,
And what kind of person are you, Jesse Dryden?
I am first and foremost a human person, and after that, it's all downhill. I am a creator, a performer, a designer. I'm a circus performer. I got into circus through clown, and from there I became a director, and from there I've become a producer and director.
Oh,
So,
can I ask you, before you got into Circus through Clown, did you go to college for circus or for something else?
I actually have the distinguished. I went to art college before I went to clown college, so I was studying production design at the Ontario College of Art and Design, which is a grade school. And my best friend called me up and said, "Hey, I've got a series of auditions." And it was just happened to be during my spring break, and I didn't make any plans, so that was great. And we went around and did a whole bunch of auditions. And the last audition that he was doing happened to be for Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Clown College. And so I was tagging along, and there's a longer anecdote there that needs to happen, but it just resulted in us literally falling down, and a soda pop rolling away. We happened to fall at the feet of Rob Merman, who was that was the one year that he was the co-director of Clown College, and he and Dick Monday were the directors, and we walked in and they handed us two applications, and I kid you not, across the top, before it even says name, it says U.S. citizens need only apply.
Uh-oh.
And I was like, wow, you guys are really elite here. And they said, why don't you just fill out the application anyway? And why don't you audition anyway? And so I did. And of course, when you audition with your best friend, you both have your fingers crossed that you both make it in. And luckily, we both made it in.
Oh,
And,
yay.
and I am the first Canadian graduate of Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Clown College. It was a very interesting year at Clown College that year because Ringling was renovating its approach, because there's this small company called Cirque du Soleil at the time that was really, broaching into different markets. And this is my take on it. This is my opinion. I think that Ringling at the time was looking to take a more artistic slant because they saw that ticket buyers were willing to do that, and the way they could do that was they owned a clown college. So why not create more European style clowning, more French, if you will, and so that they really renovated Clown College the year that we were there. So there was still a lot of that acknowledgement to the old Ringling style and that, but then they also threw Russian clowning at us,
Okay.
and Hawk style clowning.
Italian.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and lots of and you kind of had this smorgasbord. We worked out the math at one point. There was 30 students and there was 90 teachers throughout the course of Clown College.
Wow.
So there was a 3-to-1 ratio of instructor to student. And one morning you get up and Bill Irwin is making your breakfast in the pie car, and then you spend an afternoon with David Larible, and then
That's
your juggling coach is Hobby Burgess.
Oh my God.
So and to me as a Canadian, I had no knowledge of the circus culture and how integrated it was in American history, and then who these people were. I didn't know who Gunther Gable Williams was, and it turns out, he's the most famous animal trainer in the world. So it really, I knew I was in something bigger than myself when I went to Clown College, and I really did stick out like a sore thumb because I, of course, had really no interest in being a Ringling clown. I wanted to be a clown.
Yeah.
And that was painfully obvious at certain points at Clown College, which, we won't get into the trauma. But I really appreciate the training that I had from Clown College. It's a unique brotherhood, sisterhood, to belong to,
Yeah.
and the lifelong friends. And it's a vocabulary that I'm sad to say doesn't exist outside of Clown College, that there
Yeah.
isn't a lot of that happening. I know that the Clown Conservatory out in San Francisco is doing a really good job of keeping that alive, and there are a few places that are still speaking that language. But anyway, that's a very long-winded version to your...
Clown College doesn't exist anymore, right? I mean, the Ringling
No.
Brothers. And when did
No,
that dissolve?
they dissolved it in 90. I went in 95, and I think they dissolved it in 97. Like 2 years later, they dissolved it. It was financial purposes, and I think they found that they, more clowns were staying on longer and longer. So that whole, like, we need to replenish our ranks was getting harder and harder. I'm happy to say that everyone that was in my year, there's a vast majority of my year that is a good sign that they're all still working.
I think if they revived it now, they would have plenty of applicants, don't you?
Oh, yeah. If they clown college now. Well, except for Ringling has changed its format of how it does clowning now entirely. They used to have alleys of like 12 to 20 guys and girls, but now they're like, I think there's like 12, maybe 10. They're really, and they're more stunt based and choreography based. The gag, the art of the gag is something that I think is sorely missing in the circus world. And then that combined with this movement towards contemporary circus, and I use that word in air quotes, that now you can, as an aerialist, you can take clown, or as an acrobat, you take clown. And so there isn't that elite slice of that's your specialty, you are the clown.
I think there is in America now, but it's just they say physical theater, but like that's just code for I'm a clown.
Well, and I remember when I went through that when you say you're a clown, of course, people have the red nose and rainbow wig and honk, and it's a birthday party guy, and so you wanted to distinguish yourself as an artist and not as no harm to birthday clowns. I did it when I was young. It's not an easy job, but it's just a different format. It's just a different approach.
Okay. So you say you did that when you were young. So were you technically identifying as a clown before you went to clown college?
I did, I was that weird kid. I saw Cirque du Soleil in 1980, and no one had even heard of Cirque du Soleil. It was Cirque du what, and I would go to high school, and I would talk to my friends, and I did all my projects on Cirque du Soleil, and I every scrap of information I could get on them. And, there's a few articles in National Geographic or something like that. But and so my parents were crazy enough to buy me a unicycle for Christmas. And I taught myself to juggle. And then I started doing street shows. And I hooked up with a birthday clown she had a good business. So she taught me how to twist balloons and sort of how to set a price range. She was a great first mentor, how to put on the old grease paint. And then, of course, when you're in a vacuum, like so many kids were and still are, you search for there's no internet. That's how old I am. So you're just whatever you can get your hands on. And I envy the kids today, of course, with YouTube and circus centers and all that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of programs they can go to. But I was self-made, and then clown college really gave me the boost. And then from that, I went on to being a street performer, and I cut my teeth as a busker. And that was a very short time, but enough time to realize I got tired of passing the hat. And so I figured out very quickly that festivals pay you, and you don't have to pass the hat. So I worked festivals and events and got in on that. And then I got tired of that, and I needed a steady gig. So I called up Rob Merman, who was going to remember me from clown college, I was sure. And I asked if I could come work for him. And I had no idea what Smirkus was. And he said, well, I'm full up on tour, but you could go to camp. I said, sure. I'm a camp guy. I work with kids. I have a whole history prior to, my whole high school year was working at summer camps. So I went to camp, and it happened to be the same year that Mary Bluin was coming on as the camp director. And so, again, I happened to hit that one moment where it was getting a revival. It was getting, redone.
What year was that?
That was 98.
Okay.
Summer of 98. So I was only a street performer and a festival guy for 95 through to 98. And I toured across Canada doing a Fringe Festival show, which I highly recommend to anyone who's willing to cut their teeth. Fringe Festival tours are great. So anyway, I ended up at Smirkus and very quickly found myself in a leadership role. Was given the title of head coach, which was in title only. It wasn't like I was the master coach. I was there to coordinate schedules, to work with the parents, to work with the head counselor. You're just a management position. And so I was at Smirkus camp for 7 years, and then my winter job was working for Smirkus residencies. And so I would go to elementary schools and first 1 week, 2 week time periods, and then teach circus to elementary kids. And Smirkus has got a really neat format in that the idea is that the residencies feed the camp, and then the camp feeds the tour. Mm-hmm. And so the tour was always this thing that I was associated to, but I never really worked for them. Every now and then I would show up early to do setup, and by some chance I would be working with the clowns and I'd help them write a gag, but that was about as much as my involvement. I think I built a few props for them over the years. And then in 2005, in the interim I ended up doing Cirque Du Monde. Mm-hmm. And I went to South Africa and taught circus there for 6 months.
Which is the social circus program that Cirque du Soleil runs, right?
Soleil runs, yeah. Now it's also been downsized since Cirque du Soleil got bought. And anyway, but yeah. So yeah, that was a great experience. And
what did you do? Tell me a little bit about what you did when you went to Africa, you said?
Yeah, South Africa. I was stationed in Durban, which is where Gandhi started his movement. I actually got to see Gandhi's house. A little needless point of information there. But I was given, my job was to teach teachers. And it's really interesting format because, of course, it's really, I use the word racist very loosely for a bunch of white developed countries to sort of come into Africa and say, I know how to solve your problems, you just need this. Right. And then you go home. Yeah. So there's a pretentiousness to that. And Cirque Du Monde has done a very good job of, that's not the goal here. The goal is empowerment. And not necessarily to create a circus company, but to use circus as a stepping stone for empowerment. Yeah. Sometimes it's in contrast from the actual goals of the people who are doing the circus because they know that they can make money. So, that's up to the NGO to, negotiate. So Cirque Du Monde teams with a local non-government organization, and it could be both international or just local. And so you're working with a social worker. And I had 9 students from 9 different townships. And then we would get together once a week and rehearse, and we would go into the townships, which is just a fancy way of saying African ghetto. It's exactly what you see in those UNICEF ads with the corrugated steel roofs and the mud huts. But we'd go to these townships and we would set up a street show, and it would call in the community. And then while the community was gathered around, they would pass out information in that particular, this was in the late 90s. So AIDS-related information, lots of contraceptive workshops. That kind of thing. And then on top of that, each one of my students had their own troupe of local kids in their township. So there's like this web, there's there, and then it goes out from there. And so I would go to each one of their sites, and that was definitely a cultural experience. It was wonderful. It's really, really a great feeling to be the minority. And really accept that. When you're the only white guy for 500 miles, it's all right, cool. All right, this is it. I remember I once stayed at one of my students' houses, and I came in, and his little sister, who was like 3, came around the corner, saw me, screeched, and ran away. And his father came barreling around like, what's going on? And he saw me and went, oh, yeah, it's okay, I know you were coming. And he scoops up the little 3-year-old, and she's covering her arms, and she's looking at me with absolute terror. And it turns out that her only association to white people is inoculations. So she thought I was there to give her a needle. Oh, gosh. And so I had to, it's just so I had to juggle for her and stuff like that. Yeah. Wow. So it was a wonderful slice of my life. I really appreciated South Africa. And then I've since been back.
Are they still there? I was going to ask if the troops are still going.
Still going, from what I know. Yeah. Sadly, things happen. Yeah. Students have died. It's the irony of, hey, we're teaching these people how to aim. One of them died of AIDS anyway. So realities are. And I've been to Cameroon with Cirque Du Monde, and I've also been to Wematachi, which is a native reserve up here in northern Quebec. It's about a 6-hour train ride. And that one each one of those I did for 3 months. Okay. So.
Do you still work with Cirque Du Monde?
No, sadly they don't. Their program got completely renovated. Yeah. It doesn't exist. I think it's important. This is just a personal philosophy. I think that as an artist, it's a natural thing to be selfish. It's a natural thing to be narcissistic and sort of say, yeah, it's all about me, and I'm going to do my craft and my art. And I think I think Cirque Du Monde really gave me the opportunity to it sounds so cheesy, but it really does. You can give back. If you're not giving back, you're not fulfilling your role as an artist, really. And the information and the experiences I had in Cirque Du Monde certainly made me a much better artist and a much more human person. As I said in this interview, I'm a human person, but it's a very insightful thing to be able to. It's one thing to teach a bunch of North American kids how to juggle. It's another thing how to go into a place that doesn't speak your language and anywhere. I encourage anybody to try it. There's a whole bunch of people who are out there doing good work with.
And there's also like Circus Without Borders now, right?
Yeah,
Which is another option. Or Clowns Without Borders. I'm sorry.
Clowns Without Borders. There's Circus Without Borders. There's Circus of Smiles. There's all kinds of really good people doing good work out there. In fact, I always feel that if I leave it for too long, I really should get back to it. Like there's that party like
you're itching to go again and do something cool like that. Yeah. That's
you can't be me too long.
Well, tell me, how did Circus Smirkus make you grow? Like, what did you learn there?
Well, like I said, I was the head coach there for a long time. I kind of got to a point where I had kind of brokered all the solutions I could. That every year you can only inflate that leaky tire enough times, and you sort of go, okay, look, I've managed to replace the tire, I've managed to patch the tire. I can't keep solving that problem. And other problems stuck, and there's certainly a lot of me. I proudly and modestly can say a lot of me is in Smirkus camp still to this day. The infrastructure, there's a lot of that. I wasn't alone. There was a lot of people that certainly made Smirkus camp what it is. And as any company, the people who are there are making the company at that time. So I needed to go. I think it's important for artists to always go look for new horizons. And Smirkus hung on to me for one more summer, and they had me run a day camp for them up in Burlington, Vermont, sort of as my last. But this was 1995, and that was not a good year for Smirkus because that was the year that Smirkus was it 2005, not 95. That was
2000. Like, wow, that was a long time ago.
2005. 2005 was not a good year for Smirkus, and they went out of business. Well, they went bankrupt. And just by pure coincidence, I happened to be leaving Smirkus. It was like I was the first rat off the ship, but it wasn't by like I happened to be leaving, and I got a job with Cirque du Soleil that year. So as Smirkus is going down, I was going up, which was great for me and horrible for Smirkus. And while I was working for Cirque du Soleil, I got the call that Smirkus was going to survive, and they needed to rejuvenate and revive again. This is the theme of my career. And they asked me if I would be interested in coming aboard in the capacity of a director. The title was not exact. They at the time, Troy Wonderly was given the title of Big Top Director, and I was given the title of Assistant Director. And then it was very clear that was the wrong title. And the next year we revived what our responsibilities were. And through sort of a natural progression, Troy and I went to clown college with Troy Wonderly, so we knew each other and we knew how we worked. And we fed off of each other. I always think that there's a nice brotherly tension between the two of us. We hold each other in very high esteem, and we know each other well enough when the other person's probably going to disagree with us, and we're always pleasantly surprised when they actually agree. When we not going to disagree. And there's lots of conversations between Troy and I that I'd be like, oh, I expect a lot more pushback from you on that one, but apparently not. And we kept each other on our toes, and I think we did a lot of really good work for 10 years. And my job became the creative director, and Troy's job became artistic director. And
what's the difference?
Director. Well, the best way to describe it is that I was NASA and he was Houston.
Okay.
So my job was to write, develop, and come up with the themes and hire the creative team, the coaches, costumes, choreographer, anything that was involved in the actual creation of the show. And then in collaboration with Troy, we would do the casting. It was all in collaboration with Troy, but that was my primary function. And then Troy's job was to, because he's in the show, he developed what he did in the show in collaboration with me. We would cast the troupe, we would manage the troupe together during rehearsals, And then I, after opening show, would pass the torch to Troy, and then his job as artistic director was to maintain the artistic direction of the show. And it's a whole other ball of wax what he has to do with the injuries, the illnesses, the the special occasions, the morale to get that kind of monster down the road with 70 shows under its belt. That's a whole other
Oh yeah. So you didn't go on tour then?
No, I never went on tour, and I got asked a couple of times if I would be interested, and I always felt that it would have been redundant. If only just I would have to watch every show, and I would always have critique, and I always felt that, like in the professional world, you direct the show and then you hand it off to a stage manager, and then it should just run. And because Smirkus is so intense and moves at such a fast pace, the show develops very, very quickly. In fact, I learned early on with Smirkus to write the show in such a manner that I knew transitions would speed up and clowns would get longer. So I always came in at the same time frame, but by the time I saw the show, even 5 shows down the road, 5 sites down the road, the show was already at the pace where I would like it to be. The opening show was always strong, and as I said, it had to have legs. It had to get it up and walk like an infant. You had to get it up and sort of walk it. There were years where it was stumbling out the door, but there were other years where I was like running. It was often. It managed to hit the ground running. But every year was always a different challenge, and every year Rob Merman gave me a really good piece of advice, was always change one thing. And it didn't have to be something small, just one thing. And one thing for yourself as a director, as a writer. And so there'd be years I'd be like, maybe this year I'd like to do a whole show where we don't need fabric. Because it's such a staple in every show that we see. Is it possible to write a show that we don't use fabric? Now, that was my personal challenge. And then there'd be other challenges where I'd like, maybe this year everyone's always going to enter from the entrada and exit through the house. And so, or the vice versa. And if you watch my shows, every show has a different flow to it. And the main thing you asked me what I learned from Smirkus is how to do the same thing different every time. The joke is every year I would always get told best show ever, and that just sort of, well, I guess I did all that crap before. Clearly last show was suck, poop salad all over the place. But that it's because
it's improving every time.
And it wasn't improving on a uphill. It was improving laterally. And basically people want to have the same experience, but with a novelty to it. So you have to keep the core of what Smirkus is and sort of redecorate it and spin it slightly. And my composer and I, because he was the voice of Smirkus and I was the visual, we worked very, very tightly together. And every year we would sort of say, so what haven't we explored yet? What voice have we not? One year the Great Outdoors theme, this great epiphany happened. I had the nepotistic ability of having my wife be the head aerial coach, and she was doing this aerial, and I didn't know what the theme was, and the composer didn't know what to write, and we sat down, and we had never done scary in Smirkus because it's supposed to be happy joy circus, and instead we made it a campfire because it was the Great Outdoors, and it was a ghost story. And so he got to write Danny Elfman kind of music, and Allison got to write like really fun, crooked like branch choreography, and we put clowns. They were the scouts in the ring around a campfire, and we brought kids in from the ring to sit around, and Troy was the scoutmaster, and he would mime a ghost story while the branches would move around him, that's just one example of the many times that we would go, what have we never tried before?
Yeah, that's really cool.
And can we cram it into Smirkus? Can we make it palatable that the audience is going to go, well, that's too adult, or that was far too sophisticated. But Smirkus has taught me a lot. I am always thankful and grateful to the time, and ultimately that was what led me to the same thing as usual as the ARC does. I'd explored every nook and cranny creatively, and I felt that I had found every voice possible that I could find without rejuvenating. I certainly would not turn down going back to Smirkus, having explored new venues, new avenues. And so, after a decade, I kind of felt 10 years is a good number. And I negotiated with Smirkus I let them know well ahead of time that I was going to be leaving so that it just wasn't a shock to the system. And sure enough, Smirkus will continue to grow and change and be what it is. But I am, like I said, forever grateful to my time with them.
That's great.
So.
And what are your projects now that you're working on?
Oh, well, I actually, it's funny, I can't talk about it.
Oh.
My wife is in the background. You can't say anything. I'm like, okay. I have some confidentiality stuff that I can't reveal. I am involved in the National Circus School now. Because I have a lot more free time. So I'm teaching at the National. I'm actually a clown teacher now at the National Circus School, which is really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
So now I get to bring some, kind of bringing back what I said earlier. I get to sort of teach some of that old Ringling stuff. These guys have never learned, slapstick or. And when I make reference to Barry Lubin, they don't know who he is.
Barry Lubin. They should know who Barry Lubin is.
They should. They should know who Bill Irwin is.
I'm going to interview him actually in a few weeks, so we'll get them up to snuff. You can bring that video to class.
So that's one of. That's sort of a job that I'm doing, and then I've got my fingers in a lot of different. Projects, not all of them circus, mainly because that was part of the reason why Smirkus was occupying so much of my creative energy.
Yeah.
I really wanted to branch out and see what like I said, I went to art college before I went to clown college, so there's that children's book I've always wanted to illustrate, and there's
that's cool.
some other things that I wanted to do. So yeah.
Well, I was actually going to ask you if you still have a performing side. Do you still?
Oh well, yeah. Tandem with all of this, my whole time that I was at Smirkus, my off season, I was touring with Cirque Mechanics, Birdhouse.
Yep, love Cirque Mechanics.
That was really fun, and I got to perform on Broadway. Mm-hmm. If I flash back to the 13-year-old kid that was juggling at a street festival in small little rinky-dink Guelph, Ontario, I never would have thought I would be on Broadway. That's doing clown, and doing my material. And that was the best part about touring with Birdhouse Factory. Is it's the idyllic. It's what everyone dreams of, is to be part of a core troupe that respects you and that you have your role and that you're part of the company and your voice is important. Mm-hmm. And Chris Lashwa and Aloysia Gavra and all the people that made that happen, really, they've got a good heart to what they want the company to be. Chris is definitely the driving force behind that company, and I'm very grateful to the opportunity that he took a big risk on me. Mm-hmm. Because he's like, I was replacing the original clown, mm-hmm. and the original clown was Fritz Grove, who was a very good friend of mine. Everyone knows him as the Diet Coke and Mentos guy.
Yeah.
The Diet Mentos fountains. He's one of those guys.
Okay.
So that's why he left Birdhouse Factory, because he became famous with internet famous. And so Chris found me through Cirque du Soleil, and we kind of rewrote the role a little bit from the inside out, and then I toured with them for 7 years. Wow. And I got to go around the world again in a whole other way. We did Dubai and Hong Kong, cool. and the Netherlands and France. We did all kinds of. It was great. It was really, really great. It was really fun to tour. And I miss it. And you're living the dream. But we all knew that by the time we finished the European leg of the tour, that a small company like that to go for 7 years, that's a good run.
That's a pretty good run. Yeah.
Especially with no subsidization or anything. That's all Chris and that's all like that company making it happen.
Yeah.
So it's proud. You should be proud of that. I was very proud to be part of that company.
Yeah, you should be. So 2 more questions for you. One's
Sure.
sort of philosophical, and one's sort of your opinion and your advice. So the philosophical one, why?
This is my philosophical face.
Yeah, okay, good. That's good. So why do we need circus?
Oh man. Woo! Man, how long is this interview supposed to be?
Well, we're a little over, so keep it short.
I'll try to give you we need circus because we need life. I think that circus speaks to everybody. I think it's the everyman. Like soccer is the everyman sport, mm-hmm. right? All you need is a ball in a field, and everyone can play it.
Yeah.
I think that circus, at any given point in the show, there'll be something that one of many audience members will connect to. If you don't like the clowns, there's going to be the jugglers. If you don't like the jugglers, there's going to be the acrobats. There's always something. Mm-hmm. And because it's such a human experience, like live performance, and theater is right tandem with it. I mean, this is, all the arts are in this. You're talking about art, but something very special about circus, especially when you think about it being a temporary structure like a tent, that it comes in and it creates whimsy and joy and drama and a whole rainbow of emotions, daringness. I always think a great circus show is when someone can gasp and laugh within the same span of a show.
Yeah.
Like, they hold their breath and then they laugh out, and then they're in awe, and you want a tender moment. I mean, Smirkus definitely taught me. I get to exercise that emotional rainbow, as I like to say. But and I think very rarely do you get that, and also to epitomize human physical achievement. So to show that, look what bodies can do. Isn't it amazing? Look at how high they are. Look at how much they can flip. Look at how many they can juggle. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that makes it a superhuman experience that is completely conjoined with a human experience. And that for me is really the epitome of circus at its heart. You can decorate it however you want. You can call it whatever you want. But if it's got an amazing human physical feat tied with an amazing human emotion, then that is where the crossroads of circus are.
That's beautiful.
For me.
Yeah, great answer. I agree. 100%. Okay, last question. So what advice would you give to young and up-and-coming performers and directors? You got 2 minutes, go. And or director. I think ambition is really important. Tenacity is actually more important. It's all fair and good to sort of say, I really want it, and click your heels. And I think that it just sounds like a negative, but I mean it as advice. Wanting is not enough. You can't just sit there and want it. Circus will never love you the way you love circus. Circus is meant to be hard, and only the best should achieve at greatness of it. And there are, I mean that not in an elitist way. I mean there are rankings of you should know where you are. Like, you should look at that juggler and go, man, I'm not as good as that person, but man, I can still make a living doing the juggling I know how to do. And you should always be striving for growth. I always say to my students, there's always one more trick. There's always one more trick. Yeah.
And it's not enough to juggle 3. Can you juggle 4? Can you juggle 5? Can you juggle Mel's Mesh? You just accumulates. But then see, as an artist, can you push yourself into your own art? That you're not an athlete only. You're there to have a voice. And so that would be my other piece of advice, both for directors and for artists, is to find what is your voice. Yeah. And what do you want? What do you want your craft to say? Don't just throw in a back handspring simply because you know how to do it. It has to be motivated by something. Yeah. The landing is actually more important than the takeoff, in that's the period, that's the exclamation point at the end of that sentence. Yeah. And what you give to the audience at the end of that sentence is what you want them to derive from it. And the last piece of advice I would give is that the audience is never wrong. You can do a piece based on, the marriage of Figaro, and it can be abstract and it can be weird and different. And if the audience comes out and says, "Oh, that was a great, spoof of a wedding," and they don't see it, that's their experience. And your job is either to get your voice clear enough that the experience is unquestionable, or allow for everyone to have their own experience, allow the audience to have their perspective. And they may not even know that there was a theme. They might be just so astonished that you did it. Yeah. That you climbed the fabric. That might be enough for them that day to go, "Holy cow!" Yeah. And you can't be. I see too many artists get angry or disappointed in the audience, and I go, "Did they clap? Yes. Did they appreciate it? Yes. If they weren't right on your page, it's like a painting. You can't. Everyone has a different perspective on a painting, and you can't really judge the audience for having a different opinion than you. And that's more for directors than for artists than anything. The amount of times that I've had to listen to someone else have an entirely different perspective on my show. I can't. You got ego out of it.
Well, that's great, Jesse. Thanks for taking the time. No, that's all right. You had to say it. It needed a little more. Thanks so much for taking the time out to talk with us today.
No, you're welcome. This has been a delight, and we'll see you down the road.
All right. Thanks.